Great. Hi, Jane.
Hey Andrew, how you doing?
Yeah, good. Oh, it's so good to see you. I've been really looking forward to this because hi everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. I know there's been a bit of interest in hearing you tonight, Jane. So it's a real joy to have you here. And we've obviously spoken kind of off air, if you like, and we found a huge amount in common really with our kind of outlook on things. And what really hit me when we spoke was just the richness and the kind of depth and breadth of your own experiences and the different aspects that have kind of come together to create what you do now. So we're going to explore that. We're going to explore that in a little while. But beforehand, I think you've got a little exercise that you'd like us to engage in before we start.
Yeah, my name's Jane Miller, and I'm a licensed independent social worker, and I work with dogs and also horses, but mainly dogs. I ride horses. But I want to start with something that's called contact points. It's Elizabeth Stanley. You can find this on her website, and when you sign in, she will send it to you free. She wrote the book Widen the Window, which is widening the window of tolerance and capacity to deal with stress in our lives. And it's really a beautiful visualization, meditation to help you feel grounded, feel centered, feel present, because all of us are constantly living in different states. The states of activation, which can be fight, fear, freeze. Well, that would be not activation, that would be dorsal. But I'll talk to you more about that after we listen to this wonderful little audio. So if you're comfortable with closing your eyes, it can be very effective. And I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get you hearing this. Let me know if you can hear it when it starts. Hold on 1 second. Hold it up.
These are the instructions for the contact point exercise. Find a comfortable place where you can sit and have both feet flat on the ground, about shoulders width apart. As you settle in your chair, notice the contact between your feet on the ground, your legs against the chair, your lower back against the chair. And see if you can let go and settle in the chair. Noticing how the chair is supporting you, the ground is supporting you without you having to do anything at all. Just really feel the support of the chair holding your body. And as you let go and settle further, take your attention and scan your whole body, noticing if there are any places of tension or tightness or holding on. And noticing if, by bringing your awareness there, you can just let go. Your eyes and eyebrows, your jaw, your neck and shoulders, your arms and hands, your legs and feet. Just noticing if you can let go. And when you feel ready, bringing your attention back to that place of contact between the chair and your legs, chair and your back, your feet and the ground. Notice if there's one of these places where you feel that contact most strongly. And then keeping your attention at that place of contact, giving your body and your mind this period of time to help settle the nervous system, feeling that support. If your attention wanders off, just noticing it's wandered and gently guiding it back to this place of contact. Really feeling the chair and the ground supporting you without you having to do anything at all. You may notice that the body wants to take a couple deep breaths. Go ahead and do that as your body settles even more into this contact with the chair and the floor. And now I invite you to open your attention wide again and notice if anything has changed as you've been doing this exercise. Is anything different in the body? Is anything different in the mind? Just notice any changes. These few minutes allowing the body and mind to settle, being held by the chair and the floor, really help to regulate the nervous system. This concludes the contact point exercise.
Ooh, wow, thanks, Jane. What a great way to start. I hope everybody was able to kind of join along with that. And it's interesting when the narrator said, bring yourself back to kind of being aware. I found myself giving quite a deep breath. That kind of, it was interesting because you take that awareness from kind of very much in a very focused way to just suddenly being open again. Mm-hmm. So that was my experience. Thank you, Jane. Can you tell us again who that was?
Yes, that's Elizabeth Stanley, and it would be Liz Stanley, Liz Stanley, Stanley, and her book is Widen the Window. And I have many clients that do that every night. That helps them kind of let go of the day and kind of get in a better space and a space to be able to function and be able to relax. We are so unaware of what's happening in our own bodies. But I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start at my very beginning, which is the story of me, which sounds pretty weird, but I had a very interesting childhood. From a very early age, I was fascinated by animals, and they were fascinated by me, it seems, because they'd come to me, deer, rabbits, and I was constantly saving the lives of little fledglings that had fallen out of their nests and doing teardrops of food into their mouths. And I was addicted to Jacques Cousteau. I don't know if everybody knows Jacques Cousteau, very famous oceanographer, and Jane Goodall. And in fourth grade, I was in a class that we were learning about the slaughtering of the seal pups. And I don't know how old all of you are, and if any of you remember this, but there were photographs of these beautiful white-coated pups, seal pups, that were being battered. And it was like, I felt like I was being battered. And it really had this immense impact on the rest of my life, which is, at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I have to fundraise for Save Our Seals. This is 4th grade. And I have to make sure that this stops, because the reason they're being battered is for fur. So women in America can wear fur coats. And that really made me ill. And that day I went home from school and I said to my mother, I will never eat meat again. And I'm 62 and I have never eaten meat since. And at that moment I also said, I know what I want to be when I grow up. And she looked at me like, oh my gosh, here we go. And I said, I want to be Jane Goodall. And so it began at a very early age. But I couldn't figure out how I could be Jane Goodall. And really work with animals in a way, or be a part of animals' lives in a way that was healing. And I knew I didn't want to be a vet. And I didn't know what other options there were. And at the same time, I really desperately wanted to help people. I had this really strong need to help people with mental health issues. As a child, I was very perceptive, and I would know that when people were alcoholics before I saw them drinking, and before I saw the side effects. I just picked up on people. I had very intense intuition. And so I'm going to move forward now. And really, it was kind of one of those things that happens in life. I got into medical school. I thought I'd be a holistic doctor, not realizing that in America, most people don't go to doctors to change their lives. They go to doctors to get a quick fix. I call it the microwave world. We want to have things happen very quickly. And I was just like, this isn't going to work for me. And at that point, I realized that I really wanted to work to help people figure out how to live better lives, healthier lives. And I got a full scholarship to Case Western Reserve, got my degree, graduate degree in I'm a licensed independent social worker, worked at the Free Clinic of Cleveland for many years, and to move forward now, I had an office in Cleveland Heights, which is an hour from where I am, and at this time my dog, the first dog that entered my life when I was alone, and I should go back a little, to say where dogs came into my life. Tasha was the first dog that really was my heart dog. She was a Labrador Retriever. I have fondness for those, as you do. Mine was black, yours is yellow.
We have a black one as well.
What was that?
We have a black one as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And Tasha changed my life. Tasha really, I look back at my relationship with her, she really helped me through the trials and tribulations of adolescence. Gosh, I didn't train her, but she knew exactly what I needed at all times and was always there for me. And bonded, it was just incredible what we had, our relationship. And she changed my life. I owe a lot. I learned so much from her. And so, going back now forward again, Umaya really is why I am who I am today. Because when she was 5 years old, I believe it was about 5 years, she got diagnosed with fibrosarcoma, a very rare skin cancer that she needed to get radiation treatment. The treatment was right next to my office. And instead, the doctor said to me, I do not want you driving her home every day for the next, I think it was 16 days. After radiation, she needs to not be alone. I want you to be, with her. And so just take her back to the office and just let her sleep when she's there. And so she started coming to work with me. Well, that's when it all came together. Because this dog changed my clients' lives. The whole therapeutic milieu changed drastically. She was bald in the back. She had all these points on her. Clearly she was not well. But I don't know if you know golden retrievers. But sorry about the phone, I'm going to ignore it. They have a lust for life, and they're incredibly stoic. And she would put a ton of toys in her mouth, and she'd go around I'm going to turn this off. She would go around the room, putting toys in everybody's lap in the waiting room. And that waiting room used to be, filled with very severely depressed individuals and people that were really struggling, and you never heard a word out of that room. It was very quiet. Nobody talked to anybody. You'd hear giggling, you'd hear laughter. This dog, oh my gosh, it was amazing what she brought to life, because they saw her and they knew that she was not well, but it was like she helped them see that there's more to life. And then in my office, I'd have clients petting her that had been seeing me for years that would start sharing intense trauma histories and not even realize they were telling me these things because they were petting her. The other astounding thing that happened in that room was that if you came in my room and you were angry, she would walk away from you and she'd start chewing her bone voraciously. And if you were sad, she'd go to the Kleenex box and bring you a Kleenex. And I didn't teach her to do any of these things. If you were happy, she'd, play toys with you. She mirrored whatever you were feeling. And I had clients that had no clue what they were feeling emotionally. And they would look at her and say to me, "Oh God, I didn't know I was stressed out." And look at her and say, "I guess I am." And start to really tap into what's going on in their own bodies and what was happening in her body. And I had one client say to me one day that I feel like she's releasing my anger through that bone. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. They felt like she was kind of capable of helping them let go of some of their emotions that were causing them issues that they didn't feel safe enough or comfortable enough to release at that time. That's the other word I want to use. Amaya brought safety to therapy. She was a distraction, but not really. She helped people feel safe, and I had one client that would sit there and talk to her, not me, and they trusted her. And so that's the beauty of this story I have, that is my journey, which led me to realize the healing power of animals and to really see how interconnected my work with humans was interlaced with my work with animals. Go ahead, what were you going to say, Andrew?
I was just going to say, I think many people listening will have similar experiences there about how dogs just seem to have this ability. I know with my old dog Milo, when my father was in the hospice, I used to go visit my father at the hospice with Milo. And I remember there was one young girl there who was visiting a family member, and she was quite playful, and Milo was quite playful with her. We went another day, and there was a young lad who looked obviously quite sad because he's gone to visit somebody there, and Milo just sat next to him and just nudged him with his head. It's like you kind of read the two. Yeah. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because as humans, we can find it really hard to communicate emotional need. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's often because we don't feel safe to. And I think there's a bigger picture there about what do we do in society where it ends up that we can't feel safe to communicate emotional need. And through the animals, it can make a big difference. I was invited along to a local school for young adults who had various life challenges, and I gave just a little talk on the emotional experience. I like to talk about that and just how it is for dogs. And I use the good old bucket analogy that we use a lot, right? And this one lad came over, and he didn't talk to me directly. He kind of spoke to me through my dog. And the people were like, wow, he hardly says anything, right? And this young man had quite a lot of, could have quite violent outbursts at times. Mm-hmm. And he just said to my dog, "Do you know what? My bucket gets a bit full sometimes too." And isn't that cool? I just thought I'd share that. So this is really interesting. So let's just unpack this a little bit then, Jane. This is what I think is so wonderful about your story, as you say, how you bring these things in, because on the one hand, you're there trying to help support humans through supporting their own healing, if you like, their own recovery, their own understanding. And then you notice, wow, the dog can help in that. And that led you then on to, I want us to come back to emotional health as a separate thing in a bit, actually, because I think that's really important for us just to think about some of those things. And I know you're really keen on removing some of the stigma around these topics. And I think that's a good thing for us to touch on. But this is, I'm guessing, where you shifted onto this notion then, or maybe we could utilize dogs to support that kind of, that support process for the human. When did you think bigger? Then, other than just, wow, look at what my dog can do here?
Okay, that's a great question. So one of my clients, when Umaya was ill and coming to the office, and Umaya had really changed her life, ended up in a hospital, and was really going through a really horrible time, and said when she was being released, I want an Umaya. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You can barely take care of yourself. How are you going to take care of this dog? And we spent about a month talking very seriously about, but Jane, it's something for me to have to take care of. I need to take care of something else. And I need to take care of this dog. And I need to be responsible. And I need the dog to be my partner in life. And really, I struggled with this and was kind of apprehensive about, is this really the right thing to do? But she convinced me, and I will say, I'm glad she convinced me. She's the first chapter in my book, Healing Companions, Ordinary Dogs and Their Extraordinary Power to Transform Lives. And she and I went to the shelter the day she left the hospital. She fell in love with this dog. And really, that dog changed her life. She went back to school. She works full-time now. This is somebody that could barely function. And it's because of her dog. And what I'm talking about is Psychiatric Service Dogs. These are very well, highly trained dogs. But more than trained, it's the bond. The bond that we spend time working on. The ability for the human, the person, to be able to self-regulate. What I mean by that is help themselves go from activated state where they feel like hypervigilant or whatever to a calmer state. When they're in a calmer state, then their dog can be in a calmer state. The tasks we train the dog to do are tasks that help that person get into a state like we wanted you to get into when you were listening to the video, the audio at the beginning, which is a more relaxed state and a more present state where you can connect and engage with others and where you feel safe. Her dog gave her the ability to feel safe in her own home, because she didn't feel safe in her own home because she had been severely abused as a child. So, to go further on that, I think that it's so important for us to understand that we impact our animals and our animals impact us. And how can we work together to help each other live a life that's more harmonious? And my dog liked that. And yeah, please, Ma. And really understand what they're telling us. You know, just think about this is just an example. What do we do unconsciously so often when a dog is on a walk with a loose leash walk, and sees a squirrel and starts to pull? What do we automatically do, which is so surreal? We pull back. You know, it's this horrible thing that we do, that what we've done now is cause more pain when that dog is telling us it's already scared or it's excited or whatever its emotions are. We're not helping it. We're doing damage. We're doing more damage. And that's not a great way of putting it, but we're not helping this dog de-stress. And when a dog's constantly living with that kind of stress, it builds up in their body. And cortisol is what gets activated. Cortisol can last in their body for 48 hours. And then it'll keep getting built up more and more. So you'll see more and more behaviors rather than responding to what's behind that behavior. What is that dog telling me? If my dog doesn't want to come in the house when I want her to come in my house, she can stay out there. I'm not that picky, and it's a fenced-in yard, just to say. But I think it's that we need to stop trying to fit them into a box they don't fit and allow them to be who they are and live a full life that is much more compassionate and just helps the bond. What's most important to me isn't can they sit, it's do they feel connected to you? Do they trust you? Do they feel safe? Do they seem to be healthy? And that's the other thing. We don't realize that sometimes our dogs are in pain. They cover it up. And that can be behind some behavior. So we have to make sure there's not something going on in their gut, and all those things. So, yeah.
Going back to this notion of regulation and stuff, I think if we were all in a really well-regulated, rational state of mind, then there'd be hardly any problems, right? But the reality is we're constantly in that kind of oscillating flux, and as much as we might train or manage our own cognitive, present, rational brain, we can all become at the mercy of our own nervous system. Basically.
Yes.
It's just coming to a piece, and also, but partly because the nervous system is trying to tell you something. That's the point. And we've been very good at blocking that out. But so when we're with our dogs, I met a client earlier, their dog, my dog, us two, there was 4 nervous systems there. And by the end of the walk, and it took a bit of doing, I can tell you, we had 4 nervous systems in harmony, and it was really lovely to kind of feel that. But what you were saying there about actually it's that thing about feeling safe, and it's about kind of making connections and feeling a bond. A lot of the stuff we think about traditionally, especially in that first 12 months with a dog, is potentially in the way of some of this stuff. Because where are we giving at least a scope to or a window for that young dog to express need, to express self?
Mm-hmm. Find its own identity. Yeah. And I think we don't give it that ability to just sniffing, and understanding all the ways in which they're telling us things. We have to become much better at reading their body language and then responding to it appropriately. And I love what you said about, when we're activated, and we're all human, we all go all over the place. What I think, what was I going to say there? That it's so important to at least acknowledge where you're at, and then have some tools that help you get into a calmer state or to a more what we call ventral vagal state. So, to be mindful at all times. Oh boy, I'm really reacting to this. Well, maybe I need to step out of the room from my dog and take care of me and get into a better place. And so I think, it's just like if you're a child. You don't want to be in that frazzled state when your child then does something and you're going to react to it in a way that would not be fair to the child because it's your own issue, your own stuff that you're dealing with. And so I think that's the tools that I teach, which are relaxation, stress reduction techniques for humans and their animals, and they can do these things together. And so all my psychiatric service dog clients, they all learn how to help their dogs de-stress and help themselves de-stress. So when the dog's breathing changes, their breathing changes. And when their breathing changes, their dog's breathing changes. So I think it really helps all of us, the whole community, be able to talk. And I want to give an example of a session I had. I think I told you about this session. It was a woman with a Rhodesian Ridgeback. She fostered Rhodesian Ridgebacks that had come from really horrific situations. And this Rhodesian Ridgeback wouldn't go up the steps in her house and wouldn't go in a crate and was tearing the house apart, literally, the walls, chewing them. And she didn't know what to do. And she contacted me. And she came to my office, and this woman, I don't like labeling people. So this woman was talking really fast and was high-pitched and was moving a lot. And when she walked in, I said, can you just put her mat? I told her, bring the dog's mat. Can you just put a mat at the other end of the room and lay it down? Now, this was at my office, and there was a crate in there that had the door was open, which was the crate that my dogs would sometimes go in when they needed their own space for my clients. And the crate door was open, and she comes in, and I said, are you open to trying something? And she looked at me like, oh geez, what is this lady gonna do to me? And I said, can we just do some breathing and meditation? And she looked at me like, oh, this is nuts. So we started doing these breathing exercises and this meditation. And as we were doing it, the dog got on the mat and laid down. And as we continued, we just kept doing we were ignoring the dog completely. And this is a dog that never really came very close to her, was terrified of everything. And as we're doing this exercise, all of a sudden the dog got up and got in the crate and laid down in the crate. And she was just like, what did you do? And we kept doing these exercises, and in about 45 minutes, that dog came to me, put its head on my lap. I didn't do anything. We just kept doing the exercises. Next thing you know, the dog goes over to her. So to make a long story short, within an hour, this dog, you could just see it, like it was all that energy that was inside that woman and the dog was kind of getting released slowly, and knowing that it takes a while. So the woman leaves with the dog, and about an hour later I get a call. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on? And she says, my husband, I came home. And he said, what the hell did that woman do to you? And he said, her tone of voice changed completely. And this dog that night went up the stairs and slept on their bed with them. And that's surreal. I know that sounds kind of like, really? You gotta be kidding me. But it really happened. And that woman has come to some of my presentations, and she speaks up. She's just like, it's amazing. It's amazing. That woman is amazing. And I'm not amazing. I'm just trying to help people see that we have a huge impact on our animals, and our animals have a huge impact on us. And she was so tense about this dog not behaving that she wasn't able to be around that dog because she was so worried about the walls that were getting chewed. And I mean, that makes sense, but so I'm just giving that example to say we have tools that are out there that we need to learn to use for not only our dogs but for ourselves.
And I think far from people thinking that's an old story, I think many will think about something that was similar that they've experienced themselves. I went with somebody not so long ago, just by getting the guy to change his tone of voice and the way that he addressed the dog made a huge difference for that dog. He was trying to connect but couldn't. And I think it kind of makes sense really when you think about the trust and the bond that would have to have been built with us going back along to make a connection to these wonderful animals, and how we would have had to have been very aware of them and their current emotional state, and they would have been the same for us. Part of the process of domestication over time is that we've kind of taken it for granted and not done that so much. We've moved away in some ways because, especially with the shift of just recognizing actually we can control the other. But the dogs have never really lost that, I don't think. I think they're still very aware of us and very aware of how we're feeling, and that kind of makes sense, I think. And when you think of Mother Nature, she doesn't like dysregulation much, especially in kind of the adult population. It's when you look at a lot of the things that the wonderful Sindor Pangal talks about with the street dogs in India, and just how well regulated they are actually and how they're doing things, I think.
Survival.
Yeah, and this is important because they're able to make better choices being in that kind of state. And We are very dysfunctional, and we kind of I did a piece with Laura Donaldson and Holly Tett recently, and one of the things we were talking about with freedom, and listening to Laura and Holly, I just kind of summarized what they were both saying, that actually one of the things we're looking for is to offer our dogs freedom from our dysfunction.
Yeah, yeah, so true, so true. And that's why I love what I do, because it's helping both of us become more functional together. The other thing I was thinking when you were saying about dogs, that we can use techniques that are not appropriate in my book. And that's why I love horses, because that's where I've learned so much. Because 1,200 pounds, I can't possibly do something. I'm not that big. And so for me, when I ride, it's the communication. It's the horse is so in touch with my body that any move in my hip or my shoulder, that horse responds to. And so we have this beautiful dance that we're doing. When I change something, the horse lets me know. Well, I know you changed that, and I feel it. And this is what I'm going to do when you do that. Can you do something different? And it's this constant, talk about mindfulness meditation. You're in such a zone, at least I am, when I ride, because I'm so aware of my own body and my horse's body. And that has taught me so much about us with dogs, because we're not on, we don't feel it the same way, and they don't feel it the same way, but they do, and there's an energy that's going through, and I think that I frequently think about my dogs as horses, because I can't tell them what to do. I have to listen to what they need to do and respect it, and be consistent. Go ahead.
Consistent, yeah, I understand that. And I think anybody who's just slowed down with their dog and been present with them, and especially dogs who kind of struggle with the kind of social environment or whatever it is, you do feel that connection. You can feel it through the lead, actually, I think. And
oh yeah,
of course, a lot of the T-touch techniques, especially some of the things with the lead, really utilize that. And it's interesting what you say there, because it brings us back to the point you were making earlier about how we can struggle to communicate emotional need as humans, partly because of not feeling safe, but partly because of the fear of not being heard, or a history of not being heard. Whether it's parents who don't see those kind of communications of need, whether it's through school, through relationships. And this is the big shift, I think, that we're looking at now, is recognizing that perhaps our overemphasis on, doesn't mean we shouldn't do it at all, but the overemphasis on training and obedience has left us with some dogs who they just don't feel those communications are being heard, and that must be very difficult.
And they shut down. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or they
aggressive,
and they're not getting relief. They're not getting relief for those things. Yeah, I think that's interesting. So let's think about, you've mentioned the vagus nerve a few times, and I know that's an area that you're really interested in. And yes. Just to let people know, Jane's very kindly said she'd come back and see us again in the kind of early autumn, so we could look at some of the practical things about how we can regulate better with our animals, and also the new webinar series I've mentioned already, which will be launching in the group soon, for people who want to deep dive a little bit. Jane's going to do something for us there as well. But so just as a kind of an overview, then tell us a bit more about the importance of the vagus nerve, and why it is so important and instrumental when we think about regulation.
Well, yeah, I think it's, let me just first describe it. It's called the wandering nerve. It goes from the bottom of our brain stem around behind our ears and goes all the way down. This is the wandering nerve. It's the longest nerve we have. It goes down into it goes through around all the different organs and then down to our gut. You hear the gut-brain connection? Well, it goes both ways. If your gut is unhealthy, you might have problems with the brain. So this is the communicator of digestion, rest, and it also is the nerve that helps us be in a more relaxed state, a more engaged state, that we can connect with others. And when I say that, think about it. When you're activated, when you're in what we call the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight-flee system, and also has the freeze, which is the dorsal nerve, but I won't get into all the nerdy stuff right now. I studied neuroscience as well, so it's kind of nice. I have a meshing of understanding what's going on in the brain. When we're in that activated state, we can't be cognitive. We can't be in our brain. Our frontal lobe is totally shut down. So when you're yelling at a dog that is activated, it sees a deer or a snake or whatever, and it's activated, and you're yelling at it, sit, 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 it has no clue what you're saying. You're saying a lot of words that mean nothing, and shouting at it most likely, and getting tenser with the leash, and they're getting more tense. So I think it's really important. That's the time you do the opposite of what you're a human, and you get activated with the dog. When it's activated, you have to at that moment start doing your breathing exercises, doing your exercises that help activate your ventral vagal nerve. And it takes a lot of practice, but let me tell you, it can change your life and your dog's life. And it's true of humans too. When you're having a panic attack, if I said to you, just relax, or just sit down, you'll be fine. Yeah, that doesn't happen. And you also have to realize, like I said, you're activating a lot of chemicals that also stay with you for a while. It can take quite a while to come down. So the dog can nudge you, paw you, lead you out of that area that you're getting activated in, and then you both do your breathing exercises together. So I think there's so many ways in which we can think about how to help ourselves when stressed. Like when a lot of people have get upset with cars driving, and they kind of lose complete ability to be aware of the brain. It's like, and so you can do this breathing when you're driving, and you can do this at work when you're not feeling very productive or you're feeling angry at your boss or whatever. So just to say a little bit about that. I also want to talk a little bit about, at some point when we do these sessions, teaching you techniques, because that's really the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better, because one thing might work one day, it might not work the next day. And every dog is different, every human is different, and so it's really important that you not just have the on-shen point, which is an acupressure point, because that might not work at one moment. And it's really important to be cognizant of that and to teach these techniques, T-touch, acupressure points, some massage, some breathing techniques to do with your dog, to learn how to see what their heart rate is. Because dogs are really good at looking relaxed when they're not relaxed at all. And at least with humans, you can tell a little better sometimes, not always.
That's a good point, isn't it? Because we're not very good at recognizing stress in other humans. In fact, we're not very good at recognizing stress in ourselves, let alone another species. And I think this is also another important thing to recognize with where we've kind of conflated a dog doing something physical, as in not doing something, and inflated that with the dog must be in a calmer state. So this is where in fact they're probably just being more compliant. They're not necessarily feeling any different. And I love how you frame that, because in human therapy circles, as you know, we frame this as conflict cycles, where the nervous system of one elevates, activates, that then triggers an activation in the other. Mm-hmm. We see this a lot with parents and kids sometimes, especially bedtime and getting up in the mornings, right? You end up with this conflict cycle. Mm-hmm. At some point, one of those nervous systems has to try and be the one that steps back. One of those nervous systems has to be the one who's like you say, I'm going to do the opposite. Yeah. And part of this is shifting our perception, isn't it? I think because if we're stuck, which many of the general public can be because of what's in the zeitgeist, and a lot of the stuff on telly sadly isn't great, right? If they're stuck in this notion that somehow that behavior is bad, that behavior is naughty, that behavior is whatever, it can be hard for them to even have the opportunity to think about, I need to do something to kind of bring this whole situation down. So even that initial awareness, Jane, for our clients is huge, actually, and and life-changing. Like I say, even for ourselves, a lot of the stuff that we used to have, the old wives, as they say, we should thank them, because a lot of these old wives' tales, as they say, were for a reason. The whole count to 10, the whole take a breath, all these kind of things.
Pause.
it gives us a chance to kind of knock that quick thinking brain off for a second and go back to, right, I need to regulate.
It's very hard to do. And, it's interesting. Frequently, the dog picks up the cue before the person does. So I'll give you a great example. I have a client that when she'd be driving, she would dissociate. That means she was not present at all, which is kind of dangerous when you're driving. But this dog saw something, and I was in the car with her once, which is why we figured it out. When she started to dissociate, she would pick up her chapstick and start putting her chapstick on. And that's when the dog knew, I need to paw her. I need to alert her that she needs to pull off the road. And that dog automatically would stop her the minute the chapstick came up and would get her to stop driving. So that's where this mutual dance can happen that can be very powerful. Yeah.
This is why when we think about the psychiatric service dogs, the support dogs, therapy dogs, however you want to frame them, it is about that bond, because there are some things that you support and train for that dog, but every dog's connection will be unique to their caregiver, because the dog will instinctively, like say, pick up on things. And that's why it's really important to ensure the pastoral care for the human and the dog, right? Because it's important to have both of those. And when these kind of agencies are working well in the delivery of these support dogs, that's when that pastoral care is, covers both, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think for me, I run my program very differently than most organizations, which is every dog is a shelter dog. And, I see shelter dogs that have potential, that are the right age, all those things. Once they're placed with the human that's going to be the owner. I don't like that terminology, but it's going to be the one that this is going to be their psychiatric service dog. It's in training now, and hopefully it'll be able to pass to go forward. And if not, they keep that dog as a dog. But with saying that bond starts immediately. So that dog is living with this human that has some issues that they're becoming used to and alerted to and aware of, and then that really helps them then be able to intuitively do what's needed. So yeah, it is pretty magical. The other thing I want to discuss in our next session, or whenever we do a session, is attachment theory. And some of you might know about attachment theory. It's a theory that we talk about much more in the human realm. But what it really is focused on is what was your relationships, what were your relationships like when you were a child? Very young, even before you were born. But to move to when you're born, what was the consistency, lack of consistency? Was it abusive? And talking about that and seeing that there are different stages of life for a child as well as for dogs. And if these things are happening when they're at these certain ages, it can have a different impact at various times. And really understanding the history of your dog, if you know it, that's an issue. We don't always have that knowledge. But you know what? You end up learning about it. You really do. They're like us. I deeply believe dogs have post-traumatic stress disorder, just like humans. They had something happen in that car. They might be scared of going in the car. So there can be a history. And there also can be a history of relationships with humans. So I think that's really important to understand attachment theory and what they might not have gotten, that they needed, and that they now need even more. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think this is really important. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I know my friend and colleague Sarah Fisher talks a lot about adolescence and that kind of thing. And when we make everything about training, which is what many of the general public think about, the most important thing is that kind of well-trained dog. Everything becomes potentially a training issue, whereas in fact the young dog is trying to communicate need or communicate self. And there's a huge richness through those developmental stages for that individual animal. And a lot of things around the kind of attachment side of things, some of it is pretty universal. A lot of it's to do with development stages, and a lot of it is to do with seeking connection and safety when it's needed. But there will also be part of it that will be very special and unique to that individual, and as part of that kind of story, really. And a lot of the things that we see more generally there seems to be this rush to almost push dogs into kind of away a lot of the time, actually, away from these things. And it's the same with human children, of course. There's always this big pressure between the expectations of the political classes, if you like, through what a structured educational system needs to be and how we have to get kids into a certain space to be able to be pushed through that. And actually what the kids need, and as far as to be more time with mom and dad and to be more time with having that safety and that bond and that connection, I think there's so many comparisons here, Jane, and there's a lot for us to explore.
And I think it's so interesting how we get stuck with a belief system of, or a thing like, I want my dog to be an agility dog. What if your dog doesn't like agility? You know, I mean, it's like saying I want my kid to be a doctor when they don't like science. So I think we structure, or we label them, like my elderly dog, she's 12, my golden retriever, I adopted at an older age, and the owner said to me, well, you know, she doesn't walk on leash, and she doesn't sit, and she had 500 acres, she just ran free. This dog is the best healer I've ever had. I mean, she's never pulled me. She loves being on the leash. She's just very happy. And the interesting part is I didn't teach her to sit, but she looked at her sister and she saw her sitting and she was like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to do that. You know? And so they mirror each other too, you know, and it's not about training necessarily, but it's about what's the routine here. And that's another beautiful thing about animals, that they are so good at helping people with mental health issues have a routine. They have to get up in the morning. They have to put clothes on. At least in Ohio, it's really cold sometimes. You have to put clothes on. You got to feed the dog. Therefore, you feed yourself. You give your dogs the pills. You take your own pills. You walk the dog. You get out. You get into the world. It's just that without even being trained as psychiatric service dogs. And I think that's one of the things you just said, having kind of what I want my dog to be. And I always talk extensively with my clients that this dog might not make it as a service dog. You know, and we don't, if it doesn't like being out in public and doing service dog work, it won't do it. That's not what we're going to do, you know? And really being very clear at, this has to be something the dog enjoys. And that if they're not on 24 hours, you know, they're dogs. They're sentient beings. Yeah, go ahead.
We followed this through with Molly, our young dog, our blonde lab, and anybody's heard me talk about Molly will know this already, but we very much had that kind of free approach with her. We just created lots of safe environments for her to do a lot of experimental learning. We didn't teach her a lot specifically, but she learned a huge amount. But also, I kind of grieve for puppy Molly in a way, because she's not here anymore. We've got more grown up Molly, and there's a richness and a beauty to those developmental months that we can easily miss if we're just whizzing along, doing loads of training, whizzing along, while that little voice is saying, actually, I need a bit more time to process this, or I really like this, or I'm actually not very keen on that right now. There's a two-way communication, and I think some people think this narrative is about not training, and it isn't, of course. It's just getting the balance. And I think we'd be better equipping the general public, especially if we're trainers, to help them to learn about that beautiful, individual, rich, little, unique entity in front of them, and what their care and support needs are in balance for what they want to do.
And accepting them for being dogs. So when they bark, thank them. You know, you're protecting me. Good work, you know. And I think with my younger one, she lost her two best friends, the cat we had, at a very young age. She was very connected to my cat. They were very bonded. And then she lost her sister, the other dog. And I gotta tell you, I can't believe people don't think dogs grieve. I mean, she had a rough beginning, and I was really cognizant of what that meant for my relationship and what I needed to do to make sure she could get through it and still trust another dog and be able to connect with another dog. And now we have the older dog. But it was really challenging, you know, to watch this dog, and I was in pain too. So it was kind of talk about a challenging time of, I really had to get excuse my language, get my shit together. Because I really needed to be there for her, you know. And
also this notion that, my dog had a great relationship with this dog, and that dog's not with us, so we'll get another dog. as though any other dog would do. For many of these dogs, that isn't that dog, and it's and they do go through a deep grieving things. We're coming up to the end, Jamie. We'll run over a little bit because I wanted us to just talk a little bit on your thoughts on removing the stigma around emotional health. And I know you like to think about reclassifying it rather than mental illness, to reframe that into mental well-being.
Yes.
Just touch a little bit on that, because I know it's something you're very passionate about.
Yeah, thank you. I've always said I want to take the I out of mental illness and change it to the we in mental wellness. I think we live in a society and a culture, and maybe other internationally as well, where, you know, if you had cancer, you'd have an incredible support system. But if you struggle with panic attacks or anxiety or depression, oh, just go take a bath, go take a shower. You know, I mean, it's like, no. And this is the beauty of my work as a therapist, being able to help my clients see that there's something going on that's not something they can control. We can't control anything, but that's besides the point. But that there's something going on in their brain, and the beauty is that our brains, we have neuroplasticity, which means that we can make changes in what's happened and how our brain circuitry has been kind of affected by what happened growing up, and have it become more functional. So they don't feel as much as, oh my gosh, you know, there's something terrible about me. I gotta tell you, it's interesting. Psychiatric Service Dogs broke the stigma, because my clients who really were uncomfortable about talking about mental health issues now go to work with a dog that has a vest on that says it's a service dog, and you have an invisible disability. And people come up to you and ask you a lot of questions, but they're not asking you questions. They're asking you about your dog. And so my clients have become very open to saying, this is my psychiatric service dog, you know, and because they're getting more confident in that, you know, all of us have some degree of mental health issues or have had them throughout our lifetime or different periods of time. And, you know, just starting to scratch that surface and helping people, all of us, to change our whole view of mental health. And that, you know, like I said, when you understand there's sometimes it's some neurological things that can be altered by trying different techniques that will help those patterns from history change, and that you can become more functional and live more productive lives. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and this is why it's so this is why it's so important. A lot of the kind of well-being and mindfulness that we hear about, it has a real important part, because like you said earlier, just looking at the vagus nerve, going back to that again, it is a two-way communicator. So very easily our brain can get those lungs to be going really quick, to be taking those short breaths. But if we can manage to get on top of our breathing, that can also send information back to our brain that actually, oh no, we're okay. It can work both ways. And the same with our diet, of course. There's so much been explosion in studies and science around good gut health, and and you know how much serotonin is actually produced in the gut and all these kind of things, and
sleep and exercise. I mean, there's so much, but I think that it's so important that we, when we're, as a therapist, for me personally, this is my belief system, we can't just work top down but down up. And what I mean by that is, talk therapy can sometimes only go so far. And to really understand what's happening inside your body, because as Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. We have cellular memory of incidences, of experiences, and really trying to understand what's happening inside our bodies, that we're reacting to things sometimes based on something that happened when we were 4 years old, not in the present. And that's so critical. And so I want to read a quote before we end by Viktor Frankl. I love it. It's called, in quotes, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom."
That's really powerful, and it makes you think about some of the ancient wisdoms that we seem to have moved on from. This thing about being centered and grounded and being present, and how powerful that is to help our self-regulate state, and also to not have judgment when we have those elevated moments, because that's just part of that kind of oscillation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We tend to,
and like we say in meditation, mindfulness meditation, just let it pass. Don't get hooked into it. Don't just, okay, so I'm thinking about something else, or boy, I'm irritated. Okay, you're irritated, and let it out if you need to, and move forward, and not stuff it in. I think that's the other thing. People have spent most of their life not allowing themselves to feel, and we all feel, and it's getting comfortable being allowed yourself to acknowledge it.
and we have to allow people that. So I think when we're working with clients, for example, and they go out with their dog as an example, and it wasn't a great walk, or something bad happened, or it was very challenging, rather than try and be helpful and get them to just kind of dismiss that, it's important that we, as part of our education about coping strategies, is that the first thing is that they allow themselves to sit with that themselves, to feel that, and see what that tells them about themselves and where they're at and how they're coping, and what else they might need support-wise. Then they can think about what might have happened for their dog, and that gives them that chance to kind of have a more of a grounded look at it, because otherwise we just stay holding on to that feeling all the time, which will affect the next time we go out and the next time we go out. It's really important. Wow, Jane, it's been amazing. I need to be.
Can I end up real quick with the marketing tool?
Yes, so you must do. I was going to ask you. Please tell us about.
Just want to let people know I love what I do, and it's my work, but it's my passion, and I'm dedicated to this, and I want to help people live better lives with themselves and with their animals, with the world. If we could all be more peaceful, wouldn't that be wonderful? So I'm just going to give you my email address. It's jmiller, that's the initial J, Miller, at oberlin.net, and I can be reached there. You can also go to my website. It's www.healing-companions, that's with an S.org. And we have lots of videos up that'll show some of the techniques. We have one of doing stress reduction, the on-shen point on a dog in a hallway that's up there. It's Finola. You can look it up if you want to see it. And I hope you've enjoyed. It's been a real pleasure to be here. And thank you, Andrew. This has been delightful.
It's been amazing. So when we have you back in the autumn, we'll look at the practical aspects of some of these exercises that we can all do for ourselves and for our dogs, because I think that'll be a nice extra then for everybody who's seen this chat. Well, it's been amazing, Jane, and thank you for everything you do, because and you didn't become Jane Goodall, but you became Jane Miller, and that's cool, isn't it? That's cool. And so
to be honest, I did have a moment of Jane Goodall. I studied red kangaroos in captivity versus in their behaviors in the wild, and it changed the whole zoo system. So those 4 hours a day of observation changed how I look at animals, because that taught me how to look at everything they're telling me and all the details, because I was keeping track of everything. So just to add that, yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, that's good. Well, we can celebrate Jane Miller for sure. And all right, Darling, well, great to see you. Just to let everybody know, we had to postpone Sandy Sharma's chat, but we're doing it again on Friday at 4:00 UK time, ahead of Sandy's amazing summit that starts on Monday. So just thought I'd let you know about that, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Jane, and lots of love to everybody. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I am grateful. Thank you, Andy.
Bye.